After over a month of episode 2 being released, and over 6 months of researching the show, I have finally crafted the ultimate Amazing Digital Circus episode 2 theory. So in this video, I'm gonna put everything together and make sense of all of the events that happen in episode 1 and 2. So get ready, because we're not skipping any piece of information. But to put this all together, first we have to talk about the new character that we get introduced to in episode 2. Starting with my first theory, that Kane is actually telling the truth about not being able to tell the difference between NPCs and humans. He says he did it because he can't intermix humans and NPCs, otherwise something bad will happen.
If I start losing track of who's a human and who's an NPC, who knows what could happen?
And while Kane doesn't elaborate on what that means, it's possible we could find out in future episodes. But anyways, if this theory is actually true, and something bad will happen if too many NPCs and humans are together in the circus, then I'm sure there are actually quite a few things that could actually go wrong with this. The first thing is it may overload the digital circus. If you're not aware, the Amazing Digital Circus takes place in a late 90s 3D VR video game. Games from that time weren't exactly graphically or technically marvels by today's standards, so not many objects could be loaded in a scene at once. Otherwise, the system running would be under intense stress from the game. Game consoles at that time were much better at running 3D games, at least compared to Windows computers, which may or may not be the computer used in the digital circus. What it comes down to, though, is that maybe having too many characters perfectly simulated in these computers, rather than being controlled by humans, could take up a lot of resources and potentially cause more glitches and bugs in the digital circus. Maybe the NPCs aren't meant to live in the Amazing Digital Circus at all. All of the NPCs are just made up of code, so it's possible that maybe the characters just aren't meant to live that way. Similar to an animal living outside of their natural habitat, the NPC could possibly die or even abstract if they're left in the circus for too long, because that's not where they're supposed to be in the first place. The final reason is that Kane might have some sort of tracking system that are attached to the humans, and if NPCs get in the mix, it might ruin whatever kind of experiment or whatnot that Kane is doing to track the humans, and everything would get messed up. And as I said before, it would cause glitches in the game, because we still don't know if he's evil or not. And while these theories may be true, I'm leaning more towards the fact that Kane is actually lying to Pomni, and something more is up than Kane lets on. My second theory as to why Kane killed Gummigoo is because Gummigoo might have actually known some things that he wasn't supposed to. When Pomni and Gummigoo glitch out of the map, he sees some really weird stuff. All of his friends and people he knows in the Candy Canyon Kingdom are standing in a T-pose in a blue and black checkered room with nothing else in it. And it seems that Pomni and Gummigoo went out of bounds where the extra models are stored, something common in video games. The whole experience, however, sort of gave Gummigoo an existential crisis. Pomni tells Gummigoo that he is an NPC in the game, and that neither him nor his friends are real. What's even worse is that Gummigoo notices that his mom isn't actually in the big collection of characters that he sees, which causes him to wonder why he doesn't remember his mother's face, which is pretty sad. Obviously, he's an NPC who has a preset set of memories, emotions, and personality. And while his character may have a mother, this mother doesn't actually exist, because in the context of the game that the Amazing Digital Circus cast go through, it doesn't require any space for Gummigoo's mom to exist, meaning that Gummigoo's mom isn't even real. Gummigoo and his friends aren't meant to have a very deep backstory that's fleshed out. Like they say in the show, they're just obstacles to be defeated. Once Gummigoo figures this out, things can start to go wrong for Kane. So in the Amazing Digital Circus, Gummigoo is the only NPC that knew they were, well, an NPC. But I have a feeling that an NPC knowing that they're an NPC can somehow mess with whatever plans Kane has. And that might be exactly why Kane killed him in the first place. Maybe Gummigoo knew something that the others don't because he was an NPC. And if he's an NPC made of code, maybe he's supposed to be a part of the digital circus, rather than existing in it, kind of like the mannequins. He may know more about its inner workings and possibly help the cast escape. This would make perfect sense, because we see Kane instantly pop Gummigoo out of existence, and say that bad things might happen if NPCs and regular humans begin to intermingle. So what he's saying might technically be true, but it would actually be bad for Kane, not the humans. Another theory I have is that maybe Gummigoo isn't gone after all. all. See, after Gummigoo is taken out of the digital circus, Ragatha tells Pomni that Kane likes to reuse NPCs, and it's possible that he'll reappear in a future adventure.
You know, he might be back in a future adventure. I know Kane sometimes likes to reuse NPCs.
While Gummigoo being taken to the digital circus permanently seems to be off the table due to Kane's rules, I think we should discuss if he'll ever come back, and how that would exactly look. As we know, Ragatha told Pomni that the NPCs reappear because Kane reuses them, but that doesn't exactly mean that the Gummigoo that Pomni meant will ever return, and to be quite honest, I don't think that'll ever happen. In fact, I think that if Gummigoo does ever happen to reappear again, Pomni will remember Gummigoo, but Gummigoo will have no idea who Pomni is. The NPCs most likely aren't made to have memories like that, so even if they quote-unquote reappear in another adventure due to Kane reusing NPCs, I don't think that means that Gummigoo in a new adventure would have any old memories that he did when Pomni and him were friends, and met in the weird backrooms place. If anything, his mind would probably just be wiped and he would have no idea who Pomni is. He would just go back to his default set of memories, thinking his mom is still real. I think if Pomni ever did meet Gummigoo again, though she might get quite messed up about it because he will forget everything about her, but Pomni will have remembered everything that happened when they first met, though this might not be as sad as we think. When Pomni and everyone else was at Kaufmo's funeral, Pomni had a vision of her falling down back into the cellar again, but instead, this time falling into the black abyss, and she was caught by her friends this time, which to me, this seems that she finally trusts her friends and settled into the circus. Now, there's one last thing I wanted to talk about, and it's actually kinda messed up when you think about it. My theory is that I think Ragatha knew what would happen to Gummigoo when he entered the circus, but didn't tell her. And if you think about it, throughout the entire show, Ragatha has taken Pomni under her wing, protected her, and has been especially kind, which it's kinda strange to be so friendly after only knowing her for a day. But I think that just might be Ragatha's personality. Even in the first episode, when Pomni does some pretty selfish things, Ragatha doesn't stay mad at Pomni for very long, and the very next day, she tries to assure Pomni that she isn't mad at her, and understands that Pomni did what she thought she had to do. Even if Ragatha might have been in intense pain while glitching out the way that she did after her confrontation with Kaufmo, Ragatha still decides to be kind to Pomni, and help her out throughout the digital circus because she knows it's hard being brand new to the circus, and how scary it must be knowing that you'll never be able to leave. Well, at least as far as we know. But in the second episode, Pomni and Ragatha were a bit awkward around each other. They ended up separating, and that's where Pomni meets Gummigoo, and they become friends because of their shared experience of feeling meaningless. Because of this, Pomni decides to take Gummigoo back to the digital circus. But when Pomni tells Ragatha, she says this.
Oh, is that allowed?
As you can see, Ragatha sort of doubts Pomni for a moment before letting it go and telling Pomni what she's doing is nice of her. When they arrive back at the circus though, Gummigoo is killed by Kane, and I have a feeling though that Ragatha knew what was up, but still let Pomni find out the hard way in order to avoid a conflicting situation. And I mean, it's not too unlikely that she had the same idea when she first got to the digital circus. Ragatha might have also brought back an NPC, so it would only make sense that Ragatha knew what would happen and didn't tell Pomni, either for a good or a bad reason. I have a theory that Jax from the Amazing Digital Circus might not be a real human at all, but instead, he's actually one of Kane's AIs that made it through the cracks and escaped into the circus, and now he's fooling everyone. The first piece of evidence for this, which I think is quite weird, is actually from the show's merchandise. If we look at the pin set, we can see all of the characters coming with illustrations of their rooms. Jax, however, is the exception. If you look, you will see that Jax is actually outside of his room, but all of the other characters are inside their room. There might be something going on with Jax and the rooms too. If he has keys for everyone's rooms, he must have gotten them somewhere, right? Well, I think it's possible that Kane could have actually gave it to him. If you've noticed, in the beginning of episode 2, Pomni's door didn't quite seem to be locked or anything, and while Kaufmo's was locked, he was also inside of it just like Pomni. This could show that maybe Jax is setting Pomni and Ragatha up. He knew that he would unlock the door and leave them for dead. But there's another discrepancy that sets Jack apart from the rest of the humans, and this one is big. Every character in the Amazing Digital Circus is something from, well, a circus, or some kind of wacky inanimate object. Well, everyone except for Jax. Pomni is a jester, Ragatha is a doll, Zooble is a toy, Gingle is a ribbon girl with a drama mask, and Kinger is a chess piece. But what is Jax? He's just an anthropomorphic rabbit, or a furry, or something. He's seemingly the only one who doesn't fit into the Amazing Digital Circus theming in the slightest. But how does this make Jax an NPC? At first, these all seem like minor coincidences, but there is so much more to this theory. When the humans first get into the digital circus, they retain their personality, their consciousness, as well as their humanity. You probably see where I'm going with this now. Jax doesn't really have any kind of humility, empathy, or any signs of being a human. Something that everyone else, even Zooble, who seems to be quite rude too, seems to care about their friends and others. Jax is the only outlier here. He's rude to everyone, he hurts people, talks to people like they're nothing, and just generally treats their friends like they're toys, or that they're worthless, which is not normal behavior in real life. Nor is it normal in the Amazing Digital Circus. Another thing worth bringing up again is Jax's behavior. We all know that Jax doesn't quite act like the average human. He's just an NPC who tries to blend in with a bunch of humans to try not to get killed, kind of like Gummigoo. I mean, think about it. Why are any of the NPCs created in the first place? They all have a purpose for being created. The Candy Princess was there to explain to the gang their mission. Bubble is there to serve Kane. I think. Why does Bubble actually exist? And NPCs like the Gloinks and our boy Gummigoo were there to serve as an obstacle for the gang as well, to be the important part of the adventure that Kane sends everyone in the digital circus on. So, what I'm trying to say is that maybe Jax was made for a specific reason like every other one of the NPCs. So, what exactly is Jax planning? If he's an NPC that infiltrated the digital circus, he must be up to something, right? Firstly, Jax could just be generally mischievous and scandalous to mess with everyone. If you watch Jax's behavior closely, it doesn't really seem like he wants to kill anyone, at least not directly. He puts all the characters in possibly lethal danger all the time in both episodes. He's thrown bowling balls at people, making them fall into Zooble holes. He's thrown Pomni out of a truck, and he's even allowed the fudge monster to come into the Candy Canyon Kingdom. This last one, I think, is less outrageous once you consider that Jax knows that the candy people are only NPCs. Something not a lot of people brought up is that when Gummigoo found out his brothers were NPCs, he didn't seem to be sad to leave them behind in the digital circus, even after he knew that they would probably be eaten up by the fudge monster. This would probably be the exact same for Jax as well. He knows that they aren't real, and even if he's an NPC himself, he's somewhat over them because he's broken free. He knows what he is, so just like Gummigoo, he's not much different from a real member of the digital circus. Overall, Jax isn't really known for being straight up evil, but he is seen to be quite cruel at times. What if Jax has more behind him than he lets on? Well, I would like to think that Jax isn't evil and could have some form of redemption. I also think it's just as easy to say that he has some sort of nefarious plans that we don't quite know about yet. He lives with all of the members of the digital circus and has to hang out with them pretty much all of the time. So you'd think that being detached from the group would make him feel pretty lonely and isolated, but honestly, he just seems to be enjoying himself more than any other character trapped in the digital world, and I think that might be because he's not actually trapped, but because he's there to do one thing. Jax could be staying with everyone in the digital circus so that he can watch and learn about them, and with this information, it might allow him to carry out whatever evil plan he has to destroy them. But if he's actually got an evil plan, then why exactly would he be mean to them instead of gaining their trust? I think that Jax was afraid that he might have gotten too friendly with the gang, so he decided the best course of action would to be just mean enough so that no one would like him. But at that point, he wouldn't be upset that he would have to do whatever he was planning without feeling bad for what he does. Thinking about it, if he was super nice to everyone in the digital circus and gained their trust, when it came time to eradicate everyone or unleash his evil plan, he would probably have felt some sort of remorse for what he did at the end. But Jack's plan might not be working as well as he thinks. In the scene where everyone is mourning over the loss of Kaufmo and is gathered around the coffin for before his funeral, Jax actually seems somewhat sad, and then walks away to avoid feeling weak. I think that though Jax thought he could go through with this thought-out plan, the cracks are slowly starting to show, and Jax might actually change his mind, as it's already been shown that NPCs can actually change. But now, we're gonna go look back at Gummigoo and tie this whole theory up, and figure out once and for all, is Jax actually an NPC, or is he just a human that's really evil? After Pomni made friends with Gummigoo, and brought him back to the amazing digital circus, Kane instantly disintegrated him into confetti. Afterwards, Kane says this:
I start losing track of who's a human and who's an NPC. Who knows what could happen?
If that's true, then how is Jax an NPC? I think it's possible that Jax was somewhat of an experiment of Kane's new AI, which if that's true, this scene would make a whole lot more sense. Another thing to bring up about Gummigoo is exactly what he was created for. He was created just to be an obstacle for the members of the circus. Maybe Jax's original task and purpose was the same as Gummigoo's. Kane could have sent the characters in the amazing digital circus on some sort of adventure that involved Jax as an NPC. But he somehow found a way to sneak into the digital circus. And I'm sure that there's a few ways this could have happened too. Maybe he knew that this would happen after the adventure was over, considering that the place the NPCs live usually gets unloaded after it stops being needed by Kane. So it's possible that everyone inside dies. Or maybe Jax somehow found a way to snuck out instead of one of the other characters who died in his place. Or potentially another character had a similar run-in with Jax that Pomni had with Gummigoo, and Kane somehow didn't find out. This might make even more sense when you see Ragatha's reaction to Pomni inviting Gummigoo into the digital circus. She seems reluctant to let him in because she knows exactly what happened last time. Jax bullies Ragatha worst out of anyone else. So it would make sense that, even though she didn't say it, another Jax is probably one of the last things she would ever want to happen to her, just because of how Jax treats her and everyone else in the digital circus. That's not all, though. Remember what Jax was saying when Pomni first arrived in the circus?
Is this one of your NPCs, or is this a new sucker?
Jax asked Kane if Pomni is just another one of his NPCs, which is strange because Jax would know that NPCs only appear during the adventures and not when they're hanging out in the circus, which is making me think that he could be an NPC imposter. Can the members of the amazing digital circus actually feel pain? Well, to answer this, first we have to look at this scene in episode 2, where the trucks are on the bumpy road and begin to bounce out of control. This causes Ragatha and Kinger to both fall to the ground, and when they rise, several knives can be seen poking out of them. Obviously, if you had several knives in your skin, you'd probably need to go to the ER, but funnily enough, Ragatha and Kinger just both walk it off as a minor inconvenience. We even see when the anchor causes the two trucks to collide, a spike goes through, impaling Ragatha in the chest. But yet again, she just looks at it as like she spilled something on her dress. But why don't the circus members feel pain in these usually deadly situations? Well, you may think that the members of the digital circus just can't feel pain because it's some sort of video game, but as you'll see later in this video, that's actually the furthest thing from the truth. When Pomni first enters the circus, she promptly tries to remove the headset that's on her head, but as we can see, she instead starts pulling at her face, even pulling her eye out of socket by the root, as well as contorting and stretching her face in unnatural ways. This is the first piece of proof that the circus members don't process pain as they would in real life, because if you pulled your eye out of socket, especially by the root, you would probably pass out from how painful it would be. But here, Pomni doesn't even seem to break a sweat. Her face even becomes elastic and snaps back into its original place as if nothing even happened. And after everything is said and done, Pomni is simply more worried about where she is, and she doesn't even seem fazed by what she was actually just doing to her face, showing that it seemingly didn't hurt a whole lot. Now, this case specifically could have just been one of the many slapstick antics that we find Pomni perform in the show. It's important to distinguish what would be considered a gag as to what would actually be considered painful to the circus members. One scenario the creator intended to be intentionally painful to the characters was this part with Ragatha right here. When Kaufmo was unleashed from his room, he becomes violent and targets Ragatha, attacking her and throwing her against the walls of the dorms. When Kaufmo comes into contact with Ragatha, however, she becomes somewhat glitched out or abstracted herself. In this scene, we can see Ragatha glitching violently and groaning in pain, asking Pomni to help her. She even tells Pomni this at the end of the episode.
I am in so much pain!
So this seems to be one of the things that can actually hurt the members of the digital circus, and I think I know why. The characters at the end of the day are made of code, so if they glitch out, it's most likely their DNA being scrambled and rearranged. Sort of like if all the cells in your body turned into a fine material. It would probably be really painful, similar to how the code of a character glitching could severely harm them. But there's actually one question that has been in my mind ever since the release of the second episode. Can NPCs also feel pain like humans do? Well, this may sound stupid. There's actually a lot more to this theory than you may think, because we know that Gummigoo is an advanced NPC that can also feel human emotions. So theoretically, could he also feel pain? Well, to figure that out, we have to look at the scene where Pomni and Gummigoo are in the out-of-bounds backrooms area. Gummigoo witnesses something that's quite traumatized, and Pomni has to explain to him that he is not a real person, but instead an NPC. While he's having this realization, however, he says this.
You have a mom?
Shouldn't she be here with everyone else? I can't even remember her face. Did she ever have a face?
As you can see, Gummigoo is starting to remember his mother's face, despite talking about her several times in the episode and seemingly being quite fond of his mother. The reason Gummigoo doesn't remember his mother's face is because he isn't supposed to. The game ends before he ever quote-unquote meets his mother, so there would be no reason for his mom to even have a face in the first place. And this has some great implications. All of the NPC's memories are predetermined, and the memories they have aren't actually true. They never lived a real life to gain those memories. Instead, those memories are just straight up given to them. This is quite obviously sad for Gummigoo, as he realizes he's not even a real person. But was there any where Gummigoo ever felt pain? Well, maybe mental pain, yes, definitely. But physical pain? Well, we could argue that Kane killing him was painful, but I see this moment as more of Kane despawning Gummigoo rather than actually a painful death. I mean, come on, Kane even coded a little confetti effect when he died. This couldn't have been that painful. But what could have been painful for the characters, which I haven't actually seen a lot of people talking about, is this scene right here in the void, when Kane is giving Pomni a tour around the grounds of the circus. He explains that this area has not been completed yet, and is currently just an out-of-bounds empty space. Pomni looks quite frightened by this whole thing, and Kane grabs Pomni and zooms her back into the circus, where Kane puts her down on the floor, but she stumbles a bit and then pukes. This is a bit strange because the characters in the Amazing Digital Circus don't have to eat, so what would be in Pomni's stomach that she could even throw up? Well, this actually occurs again in episode 2. When Pomni and Gummigoo get trapped down in the out-of-bounds backrooms area, Pomni explains that Gummigoo is an NPC and they formulate a plan to escape, which is to use the broken collision to fling the truck back into bounds. They both land and then puke. Now, this might seem a bit random, but we really shouldn't ignore that both times a character is shown puking, it's because they were in an out-of-bounds area. My theory on this is that when the characters are taken out of bounds, they begin to behave irregularly, almost like an NPC in a video game when they are somewhere they're not supposed to be. So this causes them to puke up that black silver stuff, which probably shouldn't be possible in the first place, because they can't eat. And because they can't eat, this is most likely a thing that Kane purposely coded into the game, because whatever they're throwing up isn't food. In fact, it almost looks the exact same as the stuff that the abstracted characters are made out of. But hey, that's a theory for another day. There's still yet another thing that can give us more evidence on if the circus members can feel pain that we have to look at. In episode 2, there are a lot more scenarios where the characters feel pain. First, we get more proof that nothing can really hurt the digital circus characters. In the first scene, we see Pomni awake from her dream startled. As she falls out of bed, she lands into one of the blocks and begins to violently collide with its geometry before shooting up into the ceiling back down to the floor. Which this is interesting because this was a quote-unquote glitch that didn't seem to hurt Pomni as much as the one Ragatha was hurt by. This makes me wonder if the only pain they can feel at all is abstracting glitches, rather than any glitches at all, because otherwise, clipping into the block probably would have have been quite painful, but since it wasn't altering her body, or code, in the way abstraction does, she was only scared to this happening, presumably not feeling any pain. There's also a lot of instances of characters getting hurt in episode 2 that I think we should get into as well. Firstly, in the truck scene, Jax grabs Pomni by the throat and throws her out of the window. That's pretty much just the beginning of it though, because I think it's safe to assume that if he grabbed her by the neck like that and compressed it that much, her windpipe would most likely be crushed due to all of the pain. But that's not all though, because we see Pomni grab onto both of the trucks, which ends up causing Pomni's arm to stretch very far. This of all things would be very painful, but Pomni looks somewhat uncomfortable in that pain. Next, there's the scene where the gummy alligator gets knocked out of the truck, but you can see him holding onto the rope and sliding across the ground. Now, I don't know about you, but if I was a gummy alligator sliding across the ground that fast against rocks, I think it would pretty much melt into nothing. So I'm not sure how the alligator is surviving all this. Even as a person, your feet would get all torn up, but I don't think this bothers him whatsoever. The last thing that I've been dying to talk about is how eating and sleeping works in the circus. It's actually explained in different parts of the episode that both eating and sleeping isn't actually necessary, but they do it still, most likely just to cure boredom. I think this might prove that the characters aren't actually as human as we think, because they don't do any of the basic human functions such as eating or sleeping, but this is most likely just due to game design. Even Kane remarks in the second episode that it's been a while since he's drunk water.
I'm gonna go drink water. It's been a while since I've done that.
Because functions like this are necessary to our survival, and don't apply at all in this digital world. But why do they still insist on participating in meals and sleeping, even when they don't need to? Well, I think the reason is to bring back some sense of normalcy in their lives. When everyone was put in the amazing digital circus, they were basically anything but human, all code in a brand new body and everything. So I think I can rest my case by saying that the characters in the amazing digital circus don't really feel pain. Through almost every instance of the characters in situations that should have harmed them, they seem not to care. If anything, the only thing that seems to cause pain in the game is glitches that Kane created. We just got our first glimpse into episode 3, and I know what you may be thinking. Bro, how are you already talking about episode 3? Episode 2 literally came out a week ago. Well, I mean, that's true, but what if I told you we already know a lot more about episode 3 than you might think? And using some of these clues, we might be able to predict a release date for the new episode. But let's start by looking at this teaser that Glitch just posted to their YouTube channel. It shows all of the main characters in the amazing digital circus, but in the background we see a coffin and a picture of Gummigoo, and this could mean one of two things. Either Gummigoo will have a funeral just like Kaufmo somewhere in episode 3, or it's just a promotional teaser to hype fans up for episode 2 already having 50 million views in just 4 days. Which I gotta say, that's just absolutely insane. But what will episode 3 be about? Well, using all of the information we have, I can make a pretty good prediction. In the season 1 trailer, we get introduced to 8 brand new characters, but we still haven't met 4 of them. Those being Martha Mildenhall, the Ghost Dog, the Orbs Man, and the Reel to Reel. And I think it's safe to assume that these 3 characters will be in the same episode. But what will episode 3 be about? Well, Gooseworks has said that out of all of the episodes, she is most excited for episode 3, and episode 3 is confirmed to show us more about Zooble. So in my opinion, it makes no sense that episode 3 would be the Haunted Mansion episode. So this leads me to believe that episode 3 might be about Jax working his minimum wage job as a punishment for killing all of the candy people in the previous episode. And we will also get to meet the Orbs Man, because we know he's confirmed to be in the Spudsies location. This leaves us with a perfect amount of room to find more about Zooble and build the characters more that we have already met, because from this tweet from Gooseworks right here, we can see her say that this show is going to be 95% character progression related stuff. So honestly, I'm just excited to see where she goes with this. And on the topic of leaking things about episode 3, Gooseworks also said that the circus members actually remembered their past lives. So it's going to be really cool to see how this will play into later episodes, because Gooseworks clearly told us this because it has relevance later on in the show. But when will episode 3 come out? Well, we know that there was a 6-month gap between the first and the second episode, which is actually pretty good for indie animation, especially considering the gap from episode 1 and 2 of Murder Drones was over a year, but the gap between episode 2 and 3 of Murder Drones was only 3 months. months. And no diss to the digital circus, but Murder Drone's animations looks like it's a lot harder to make, especially because of all these cool glowing effects. So I think it's reasonable to assume that we will get episode 2 in the next 2 to 3 months, assuming it follows the same pattern as Murder Drones. But another one of the giant teasers we've recently gotten is on the Wacky Watch. And as we all know, this is Glitch's secret website where they post teasers about the show. And it went from this VHS ad for the digital circus, to this image of Pomni sleeping in her room, to this gif of Pomni laying awake in her room. But finally, it got updated to this teaser right here, right after the release of episode 2. And it shows a bunch of confetti in the circus, which obviously seems to be a reference to Gummigoo's death, making me think that Gummigoo will potentially come back and have some significance in episode 3. And if you didn't know, Gummigoo gets introduced as the villain in the Candy Canyon Kingdom that has been stealing the Candy Princess's maple syrup. So the circus members hop in the whip and chase down the Gummy Bandit in their newly acquired truck. And on this crazy ride, they eventually collide, sending the cars into different directions, sending Pomni and Gummigoo's truck into the wall, glitching and colliding into the map. In this new location, we see a bunch of different things that we haven't seen before. At first, this place gives me some sort of backrooms type vibes, but as Gummigoo walks closer into this place, we can see still models of all of the NPCs that the humans meet in the Candy Canyon Kingdom. But what's interesting is that Gummigoo looks specifically intrigued when he is looking at the model of himself. And this definitely caused him a lot of confusion, kind of similarly to how looking in the mirror also caused Pomni a lot of confusion. And shortly after Gummigoo's breakdown, Pomni falls into the behind the scenes area, and Gummigoo immediately questions what is going on and where he is, because to him, the Candy Canyon Kingdom is his entire life, and now there are a bunch of things being thrown at him that question his thought to be humanity. It's just like if aliens were to come down to Earth and tell us that we were all part of a simulation or something. It would make us feel pretty pointless, wouldn't it?
Where are we? What's all this?
I don't know. We're somewhere under the map, I think.
Map? Why aren't you or any of your crew up here?
I'm not sure. Because we're not, NPCs?
NPCs? What are you on about?
And right here in this moment, something clicked in his brain. He isn't real. He is merely just a pawn in Kane's big game. And his sole purpose is to be an obstacle for when the humans enter the Candy Canyon Kingdom.
What are you people? What am I? Where's Mum?
You have a mom?
Shouldn't she be here with everyone else? I can't even remember her face. Did she ever have a face? Was anything ever real?
Okay, wait, don't think about that.
This part is really interesting. We know he's just one of Kane's NPCs, but he says something about having a mom and remembering her face, which tells us that Gummigoo isn't just any ordinary NPC. Because when you think of an NPC, you think of a character in a video game that's only purpose is to serve the player. But the fact is that Gummigoo has feelings and a family. It really shifts our perspectives about who the NPCs are in the amazing digital circus. But let's go over the rest of what happens to Gummigoo in the episode.
I want you to tell me exactly what I am.
Gummigoo asks Pomni all sorts of questions, and fully figures out the point of his existence in this digital world. But this backfires for Pomni and leaves Gummigoo in a deep state of depression.
You wanna try helping out at all? Or are you still... Hey, you okay?
No.
You want to talk about it?
What is there to talk about?
I don't just want to leave you here.
Why not? I don't matter in the slightest. I'm nothing. My life, my memories, my friends. It's all fake.
Pomni then explains to Gummigoo that she feels his pain and was in a similar situation, and then she offers to let Gummigoo join them as a new addition to the crew of the amazing digital circus. Gummigoo questions her offer, but then accepts it and tries to find a way out of the behind-the-scenes area that they got trapped in. And to me, I think this is definitely one of those areas that Kane didn't want the circus members seeing, because in episode 1 he mentions that he hates people seeing his unfinished work.
Oh, Bubble, you always know how to make me say this exact sentence. Yes! An alert on my Wacky Watch at this hour? Oh no! Someone's venturing out into the void! They'll get totally spoiled!
But now, Gummigoo and Pomni team up and get all the way back up to the portal in the circus. But here, something soul-crushing happens.
See you again sometime, bye!
Welcome back, my little hard-shelled hamburgers!
So this is the circus, huh? I gotta get used to this.
Oh, looks like one of these guys made it through!
Wait, what?
Wait, what?
Gummigoo is brutally killed in front of Pomni, and Kane has no remorse for his actions. But this brings up the question though, will Gummigoo return in later episodes, even though he is dead? And to that, I would say yes. The first thing that makes me think this is all of the backstory and secrets that we still don't know about Gummigoo. Like, we still haven't met his family, we don't know any of his past in the Candy Canyon Kingdom as a bandit. There are just so many unanswered questions about Gummigoo. The second reason I think he'll return is because he's already being sold as a marketable plushie on the Glitch Productions store, and there are no other characters besides the main circus members who are also sold on the website, which tells me that Gummigoo will have some sort of bigger significance in the later episodes. Gooseworks also seems to really like this character, stating multiple times that this is her favorite character in the show, so to me, it seems to be a no-brainer that he will come back. But can Kane actually bring a dead circus member back to life? And to that, I would argue that he can. As we can see right here in the backrooms area, there are still models of all of the NPCs in the Candy Canyon Kingdom. And I'm gonna take a guess here and say that these can be used very similarly to how models can be moved in 3D animation. So I think that bringing Gummigoo back to life would be as simple as Kane taking the model for Gummigoo and reattaching the script to his body to make him function again. Which, if this logic is true, that would mean that Kane is able to make clones of any NPC that he wants, which actually makes perfect sense because of all the wooden mannequins that we see in the show. Another thing making me think that Gummigoo is coming back is the fact that Ragatha said this.
Well, I'm gonna go drink water! It's been a while since I've done that.
Sheesh, I thought he'd never leave. I'm really sorry about that, Pomni. At least you tried. You know, he might be back in a future adventure. I know Kane sometimes likes to reuse NPCs.
Which makes me think that Kane could reuse Gummigoo as an NPC in one of the later adventures of the show. But now that we know he might come back, let's dive a little bit deeper into his backstory and see if there's anything about Gummigoo that we could be missing. After rewatching the episode about 5 billion times, I think the only thing that is going to tie this whole theory together actually has to do with Kane, and the references to Christianity throughout this episode. Now, stay with me here. In the very beginning of the episode, the Queen remarks that they must be brave knights sent by God to help with the recent catastrophe. I think that there's some other things that we can actually infer from this. The first thing is the obvious biblical references that continue even into this episode. The second is that Kane somewhat sees himself as God. And to be fair, he is God to all of the members of the amazing digital circus. But first, let's talk about the biggest thing that stood out to me in episode 2. We see even less of Kane in episode 2 than we do in the first episode, but we can still take away a few key things from this episode about Kane. At the beginning of episode 2, Kane is incredibly quick to get rid of everyone except for Zooble. Once everyone is inside of the Candy Canyon Kingdom, they meet the Candy Queen, and she immediately says that they must be the brave knights sent by God to help them with the recent catastrophe.
You must be the brave knight sent to us by God to help us with our recent catastrophe.
And I think that there are some things that we could take away from this. The first thing is the obvious biblical references that continue all the way up even into this episode. And this is now becoming a more common theme in the show, because we know in the pilot episode there was a biblical reference when it panned up to the CNA sign, and many people theorize that this sign stands for the biblical story Cain and Abel. But now with another reference to God in the show, I feel like this theory is even more likely. But what if I told you that Cain somewhat sees himself as God, either in a literal or figurative way? Cain, however, does have a lot of powers that would suggest he is somewhat of a god in the amazing digital circus. First of all, he's somewhat opient, meaning he knows at least slightly what's going on with everyone, which is one of the more known powers of the biblical god. Next, he can create just about anything that he wants, and make anything that he wants to happen, which is again another power that the biblical god is known to have. One more thing, which is less of a power but more of a parallel to the biblical god, is that Cain, for the most part, lets the humans have free will, but guides the humans to do what he wants them to do. In the Bible, it's stated that God will not force a person to follow him, but will let them ultimately come to their own conclusions, while guiding them along the right path. While Cain isn't necessarily trying to guide the humans into everlasting life and salvation, like in the Bible, the digital circus is somewhat similar to it, but something to note is that the God of the Bible created heaven and rules over it, and I think the same can be said for Cain. This brings up a whole lot more questions for the show. Just think for a moment what we know about Kane. He's supposedly an AI put in the amazing digital circus to be a ringmaster, and works on it actively, as evidenced by the exit doors and the void, both being unfinished things that Kane is embarrassed about. But I think that everything we know about Kane on surface level is a lie, and I'm gonna tell you exactly why. It all stems from this clip right here. There's one thing in this clip that's very important. As I've previously said, the blue logo that says CNA on the wall is what we're looking for here. If the biblical references weren't enough for you, here you go, because the leading theory for what CNA stands for is actually a biblical reference to the story of Cain and Abel, the two sons of Adam and Eve. And if you didn't know, the story is that Cain and Abel both brought their sacrifices to God. While Abel brought forth his best meat for God in exchange for the forgiveness of his sins, Cain only brought God a variety of fruit, most likely not the best ones either. Because of Cain's unwillingness to put forth his best, God found favor upon Abel, and did not accept Cain's sacrifice. Because of this, Cain killed his brother Abel out of jealousy, and after this happened, God punished Cain by forcing him to become a wanderer and fugitive on Earth. While I'm not exactly saying that Cain offered God fruit and killed his brother, I think it's worth noting the similarities between the Bible and the amazing digital circus, as well as what this could mean for possible plot points. Now think about it. Why would the company be called CNA? Basically a direct reference to Cain and Abel, and have nothing to do with Cain from the digital circus. Well, that's the thing. It has to be on purpose. I don't think they would drop a clue like this just for it to be a red herring. But nonetheless, it's definitely at least a parallel to other things that are going to be important later in the show. And mark my words, guys, I guarantee that in the later episodes, there are going to be more and more references to Cain being God. Because this is the thing that the circus members really need to realize to escape the circus. But there's actually one person who knows this. One person who is absolutely hated in the second episode, and that would be Jax. Now, if you didn't know, Jax was acting incredibly different in the second episode. In the first episode, he was just witty, and was kind of picking on all of the other circus members. But in the second episode, he seems very mean-spirited, and tries to bully and hurt all of the circus members for his entertainment. And a lot of people actually dislike Jax for this. But what if I told you that him doing this is actually really smart? Jax is probably the only character who has the right approach. It's like he has the final mentality they'll all have if they were there long enough. As in that all of the side quests are basically a waste of time to keep them busy. Even the parts with NPCs becoming self-aware may have just been scripted to play with the emotions of the player's characters, just in a meta way. So someone who has done enough of the adventures knows that it's all BS and that they are just God's puppets and they are being manipulated. So being as chaotic as possible is ultimately ultimately the only way to deal with it. So you're showing quote-unquote God that you can't be toyed with, basically. It's an even more meta way of saying, if you think outside of a show's context, that whole segment was like a meta commentary of having an adventure of the week. So yeah, I think Jax is really onto something here, and I think that he is completely right with this approach for handling the adventures. And I gotta say, I also think this is the reason why Zooble is sitting out of all of the adventures, because where Jax takes the approach of having fun and causing as much destruction as he can, Zooble tries to take more of a passive approach while still avoiding Kane's stupid games that he likes to play. But this brings us on to our next point. Kane isn't as powerful as we may think. Let me explain. In the first episode of the show, Ragatha gets glitched out by the abstracted Kaufmo, and she tells Pomni that Kane can fix her. Once Ragatha is taken to Kane, he fixes her right up. But Pomni looks at her arm and notices that, despite Kane not helping Pomni, it healed on its own. Now, this has led to many theories that if Ragatha couldn't heal herself, then Pomni definitely shouldn't have been able to, but she seemingly did, and shown by her confusion, it is most likely an accident. Now, if someone has these kind of special abilities in the circus, I think it would definitely be Pomni, and there is a lot of theories surrounding this at the moment, but I think it's safe to say that Pomni was a bit more involved in the creation of the amazing digital circus than she's let on. But you may be wondering, what does this have to do with Kane not being as powerful as we may think? Well, before I get to that, first I have to tell you about Zooble, and out of all the characters in the amazing digital circus, to me, she just seems the weirdest. She likes to skip out on whatever adventures the characters may be going on during that day, which if you know how Kane was, shouldn't be possible because he would be forcing her to do it basically. So why is Zooble allowed to skip out on the adventures? Well, I think that there might be something going on with Kane and Zooble that we don't know about yet. If you remember, in the first episode, Kane tells Pomni that he has all-seeing eyes all throughout the circus, but when he leaves in episode 2, we see Zooble coming out from behind the wall, remarking that she thought he would never leave. But obviously this wouldn't make any sense, because not only is standing behind a wall just a bad hiding spot, but if Kane has all-seeing eyes, he would have known she was there anyways. And it's not like the funeral Zooble was preparing was anything secret anyway. So I'm not sure what this is, but I think that Zooble is doing something way more sneaky that we are not aware about yet. But the point is, Kane can't fully keep track of what the circus members are up to. Then, obviously, when Pomni and Gummigoo glitch into the behind-the-scenes area, Kane would have immediately wanted them to get out of there, because we know that Kane doesn't want circus members getting spoiled.
Yes! An alert on my Wacky Watch at this hour? Oh no! Someone's venturing out into the void! They'll get totally spoiled!
So this is clearly telling us that Kane isn't as powerful as we think, and if Pomni and Gummigoo can get in the behind-the-scenes area that easily, imagine if the circus members snuck into a place with a real working exit door, if that theoretically existed. It's weird because we know that Kane can see on his Wacky Watch if someone is in the void, but he didn't notice them when they clipped under the map, which also makes me question, what places can Kane track the circus members? And unfortunately at this point, nothing is really confirmed, but this brings us to our last point. What is Kane hiding from us? Well, this is big, so hear me out. Kane is one of the original creators of CNA and the Amazing Digital Circus. While Kane doesn't act stranger than anyone else, if he was the Amazing Digital Circus's creator, it would make sense because no one around him know how to get there. It also goes to show why he'd be so self-conscious about his unfinished work in the digital circus, if he's keeping it a secret that he's the creator.
This is the void! We don't venture out into the void. Not even I know what's out there. I do have to apologize for lying about the exit. I knew how much all of you have been wanting there to be one, but, you know, I was having so much trouble figuring out what to put on the other side and ended up never quite finishing it.
Bit of a sidetrack here before I go on with the theory. I just noticed that Pomni and Kane go into the void in the pilot episode at exactly 4 minutes and 4 seconds. Anyways, I thought that was pretty cool. Back to what I was saying. When you're creating something, it's often embarrassing to show someone an unfinished draft of whatever you're working on. So if Kane had been the real creator of the Amazing Digital Circus, then it wouldn't be too far-fetched to think that he might have been the original creator of it in the first place. Something to note though is that when he's trying to convince them that he's telling the truth, true. To me, his tone almost sounds like he's lying, and he's just trying to convince others. What I mean is, Kane maybe isn't actually shy about the void at all, but is actually using excuses so people just won't go out there. I think that Kane is one of the original creators of the Amazing Digital Circus, or at least he partly owned the company that did, and if Kane shows any similarities to his biblical counterpart, then he may have done something bad to his brother and was punished for it. Perhaps the Digital Circus is that punishment, or maybe his punishment still awaits him. But I think that while he's trapped in the Digital Circus, or maybe he's not trapped at all, he likes to rule over the humans, and over time he's begun to see himself almost as God. And I'm not sure what this is about, but I think that Kane is hiding something big, and I'm sure that it won't be long until we figure out exactly what Kane is hiding. Jax has always been known as a sort of mean character in the Amazing Digital Circus. His first appearance even shows him having a bad attitude with Kane. In today's episode, I'm gonna dive into Jax's character and attempt to explain what's up with Jax in episode 2, why he's so mean, and what could happen to Jax by the end of the show. But before I go in depth, I want to generally explain Jax as a character, and how he fits into the Amazing Digital Circus. Jax is a mischievous, laid-back, sassy, and egotistical character. He's unempathetic, and he doesn't quite mind his imprisonment in the Digital Circus. One of his more famous lines, which perfectly describes him, is this:
I'm fine with doing whatever, as long as I get to see funny things happen to people.
This line kind of shows his whole personality, because he quite literally just does things that he finds funny, most often at the expense of others, which gives off a cruel and indifferent type vibe, as well as just making him look like a jerk. But there is a big difference between how he acts in episode 1 and how he begins to start acting in episode 2. And in this video, we're gonna be discovering if that's a good or a bad thing for Jax, and what it might lead to in the later episodes. But first, let's go over some important things from the pilot episode. As we can see from the very start, Jax is shown to be short-tempered and rude. At this point though, Jax is somewhat more of a relatable character. I mean, I would also be upset about having to completely redo the intro song. This is only the beginning for Jax though, as it only gets worse from here.
Wouldn't that more likely mean the exit does exist?
Could also mean you just have a jump start and losing your mind.
In this clip, Jax tells Pomni that she got a head start on going insane, which makes her even more scared.
By the way, I may have left something in your room today, so let me know if you find it. You're not afraid of centipedes, are you?
Jax! That's literally my only fear. Why would you do this?
What? It could be a completely unrelated question. You'll never know until it's too late.
And here we see Jax tease Ragatha by telling her that he may or may not have put a centipede in her room, knowing that centipedes are her one and only fear. While we never find out if there's a centipede put in Ragatha's room, it's pretty safe to assume, knowing Jax, that he actually put one in there. But now I feel like we got a pretty good idea of how Jax acted in episode 1. He seems to somewhat be a friend to everyone while still making fun of people. He pushes it too far in some ways, especially with Gengo and Ragatha, who are both mostly forgiving to him. But in episode 2, he acts a lot worse. So now let's analyze how he acts in episode 2 to see how his behavior's changed over time.
Alright, Gangle. When we catch up to him, I'll jump over, crawl inside, and shoot him repeatedly until they're unrecognizable.
I feel like that violates some kind of convention.
You're violating my ears with your clapback. Get driving, driver!
In this part, Jax's first instinct is to shoot him up with this shotgun until they're unrecognizable, meaning he would continue to shoot them until there is nothing left. While Gengo protests this, Jax gets really mean, basically telling Gengo to stop talking and continue driving. In this one clip alone, you can already see that something is definitely up with Jax in the way he's being exponentially worse than he was in episode 1.
Oh, Pomni, I'm sure there's some way you could help out here. Maybe when we catch up to them, we could...
Gotta be assertive. Like this!
Hey! Jax!
Next, Jax grabs Pomni and throws her out of the truck. Ragatha gets really angry at Jax because Pomni is still warming up to the circus, and treating her like that will only make it worse. But Jax obviously doesn't care.
Hey, Ribbons! Up and at him!
I don't think we...
Aren't you supposed to be submissive and agreeable? Move it!
In this part, we see much more of Jax bullying Gangle for literally no reason, telling Gangle to go on the rocky ground, even though the vehicle isn't supposed to go on the terrain like that. This later causes Ragatha and Kanger to be impaled with several knives as well as shaking around the whole vehicle. This scene has quite a lot to unpack. Firstly, Jax tells Gangle to ram into the alligators. Ragatha pops up and tells Jax that it's a bad idea, but Jax palms her in the face and shoves her to the ground, back into the knives. Then he tells Gangle once again to ram into them, or he'll tell Ragatha about the figurine thing, which I feel sorry for those who understand the joke. Then you realize Pomni is on the other bus when it's getting rammed. Jax genuinely seems to have no regard for others. This is the end of the truck scene, but there's one more scene in episode 2 that really shows how messed up he is.
Oh, hey, maybe I didn't leave the gate unlocked for nothing after all.
What? I thought he was dead. You still did that?
Okay, wait. You did what now?
Well, love to help you again sometime. Bye!
In this scene, Jax reveals he let the fudge monster who eats the candy people back into the kingdom, meaning that he is going to eat all of the candy NPCs. Jax didn't even have to do that in the first place, but he just did to create chaos. So now that I've gone over both episode 1 and episode 2, there is an obvious winner in which episode he acts worse. And without a doubt, no question, it's episode 2. He behaves rather strangely in this episode, and there's some things I want to go over. Firstly, throughout the entirety of episode 2, he seems extra violent, being especially mean and dismissive of others, to a point where it even made me feel uncomfortable. Something I think should be noted is this clip right here.
We like to have a little funeral service to remember the people who abstract.
As you can see, when talking about Kaufmo abstracting, Kane looks like he is distraught or maybe even sad about Kaufmo's funeral, which is way out of line for Jax. I think this one facial expression from Jax actually might explain his behavior throughout the entirety of the second episode, and why he is much worse this time around than in episode 1. I think what's really troubling here is Jax, and what makes him behave in this way is actually Kaufmo getting abstracted. It might seem crazy at first considering his initial reaction, cracking jokes and running away instead of helping, but just hear me out. I think that Jax is secretly upset, but instead of showing his weakness, he sets up self-defense by behaving like a jerk so he doesn't damage his ego by showing others that he's upset by the loss of Kaufmo, which actually hurt him. When you think about it, it makes total sense, but I could be completely wrong. Finally, I want to go over why Jax is like this, and I have one theory about this. I think that Jax only behaves this way to avoid going crazy and abstracting, because if you think about it, his only option to staying alive is not going crazy and abstracting. By adopting this laid-back and nonchalant attitude while also teasing and bullying others, it's entertaining enough to keep him from being abstracted. Like he said, he likes seeing funny things happen to other people, and in the Amazing Digital Circus, this is always bound to happen. So Jax seems to be thriving in the Amazing Digital Circus. All we can do is hope that he gets a redemption arc or something, but there's actually one other thing to consider here. Maybe Jax is the only one who's doing it right. The one goal to get through the Amazing Digital Circus is not to become abstracted, and the only way to not become abstracted is by not going insane. Because of how formulaic and predictable the adventures are that Kane puts everyone through, you are bound to go insane by doing them day after day after day. Jax, however, doesn't really follow this. Instead, he decides to cause chaos everywhere he goes, which is entertaining for him. Jax has realized that the adventures are mostly BS. And to be fair, so is Zooble, because she doesn't even go on the adventures, but that's another theory. But anyways, the point is, Jax causes chaos and confusion everywhere he goes. I think this is why we see Kane being so random and mean throughout the episodes. He's trying to entertain himself so himself doesn't go insane, because he knows that everything around him is pretty much pointless. And while I feel bad for the other characters having to deal with Jax, you can't really blame him. For as far as we know, these characters probably don't remember each other in real life, so there's not much of a reason for Jax to even be nice to them in the first place. For all Jax knows, they could also be NPCs, so maybe Jax could just be a bit nicer to everyone else, and maybe cool it down a little bit. But at the end of the day, I think he might be doing the right thing for himself, and I'm just interested to see what happens to Jax in later episodes. This is the entire Amazing Digital Circus iceberg, and today we're going to be going over every level, with each level covering more and more obscure and dark knowledge about the show, starting with the surface. The pilot episode for the Amazing Digital Circus was released on October 13th of 2023, and it was instantly a hit, with at the time of recording this video having over 300 million views. This show became so popular, in fact, that just off of one episode, it won the Annie Awards. Gooseworks. If you didn't know, Gooseworks is the creator of the Amazing Digital Circus. But if you're not a diehard fan, you may be confused because the Amazing Digital Circus is uploaded to Glitch's YouTube channel. This is because Gooseworks writes all the scripts and has the creative vision for the show, while Glitch does the animation and post-production work. They do it like this because this show takes a lot of time and money to be done the right way, so Gooseworks needed to reach out to have her vision for the show done correctly. Pre-pilot trailers. This is referring to all of the character introduction videos and trailers we've gotten for the Amazing Digital Circus. Now, if you don't know, the Amazing Digital Circus was teased almost a year before it actually came out, with the first teaser video called A New Era coming out on January 27, 2023. This video introduced news for murder drones and their vision for a change in indie animation, but most importantly, it gave us our first peek into what the Amazing Digital Circus would look like. Glitch Productions. Glitch Productions is the indie animation studio in charge for animating and breathing life into the Amazing Digital Circus. They have been around since 2017, but at that time they were known as Glitchy Boy, and only changed their name to Glitch Productions in 2018. They also work on other popular shows like Murder Drones, SMG4, and Meta Runner. If it weren't for this company, the Amazing Digital Circus and all of these other shows simply wouldn't exist. Digital Circus Wiki. The Amazing Digital Circus Wiki is a website where any and all Amazing Digital Circus facts and trivia are held. There's pages on almost anything, from Pomni to the Gloink Queen. There are also a lot of people who contribute to these pages to make sure that they have all kinds of important and up-to-date facts. AI. My guess is this is referring to how Kane and most of the side characters we see in the show are NPCs, and Kane is the AI ringmaster controlling everything that happens in the circus. Actually, as a matter of fact, everyone in the Amazing Digital Circus is AI besides the main cast of the circus, which are humans who are trapped in this world and have no way to leave. The Gloink Queen. The Gloink Queen is another one of Kane's NPCs that appears for a little bit in the pilot episode. The reason for the Gloink Queen's appearance is because of Kane's mission he sent the members of the circus on in the pilot episode called Gather the Gloinks. Then later in the episode, the Gloinks captured Zooble, prompting Kanger and Gingle to go try to rescue her from the Gloink Queen. Abstraction. Abstraction is what happens in the Amazing Digital Circus when one of the circus members fully loses their humanity and go crazy, causing them to become an abstracted monster. When a circus member becomes abstracted, they will become violent and lose any semblance of a human being. They will also begin attacking and destroying things. We see Kaufmo, who was replaced by Pomni, become abstracted in the first episode, and after he's caught by Kane, he gets sent to the cellar, where we see many other abstracted characters. 90s education aesthetic. The 90s education aesthetic refers to the way that the Amazing Digital Circus is portrayed throughout the pilot episode. We first see it open up with a pixelated text card and graphics reminiscent of early 3D graphics in the early 90s. If we take a look inside of the circus, it's not exactly the most detailed and is actually quite empty besides a few basic structures, which would suggest that it's not a high-level game at that. Also, when Pomni looks at what is insinuated to be her desk, we see an old computer, and this computer likely came from the early to mid-90s. Also, if we take a look at the whole show, everything is colorful and simple, which is pretty much how 90s educational games were. The main theme. The main theme refers to the Amazing Digital Circus's iconic theme song that plays numerous times throughout the show. This song was composed by Gooseworks herself, and it was even recently put on a vinyl that they sell with the rest of the episode's music, and they sell this on their merch store. The tent. The tent is the area in the Amazing Digital Circus that we see the most of. Its exterior features yellow and red stripes. On the inside is where most of the first episode occurs. It's actually quite huge and has a huge middle room, hallways and various doors leading to basically nowhere, and even an entire underground area where the Gloink Queen lives. But I'm sure there's still a lot of this tent that we haven't seen. The grounds. The grounds refers to the entire entire area where everything is located in the Amazing Digital Circus. This is where the tent, the digital lake, and everything in the main area is located. The cellar. The cellar is the area in the Amazing Digital Circus where abstracted characters go. There's not much info about it, but what we do know is that there are many abstracted characters there, including Kaufmo. It also seems that Kane can access it from anywhere in the circus using his magic. The void. The void is white space outside the grounds. Kane tells Pomni that all that's in the void is undeveloped area, and that he's shy or anxious about letting the other members see his unfinished work. But it's widely speculated that there's actually something much deeper going on here that we don't know about. I believe that the void could possibly be the keys for how to escape the digital circus, and Kane just doesn't want Pomni to find that out. Exit doors. The exit door is what's shown to us multiple times in the first episode of the Amazing Digital Circus. As soon as Pomni enters the Amazing Digital Circus once the intro starts, the first thing she does is chase an exit door, which then disintegrates right in front of her. Although in the episode, Pomni sees this red exit door taunting her and tempting her to go inside of it. No one else in the Amazing Digital Circus can see the exit door though, except for Kaufmo, who is known to have apparently seen it because it's painted on his wall along with the demented drawings of Kane and many other disturbing drawings. I'm not sure yet why Kaufmo and Pomni can't both see them, but I think both of them have some sort of special ability that the rest of the circus cast doesn't. Anyways, when Pomni finally goes through the door, instead of going through, she is met with long winding office rooms, incredibly reminiscent of the hit game The Stanley Parable. And when she sees the office, she starts going crazy and leaves going into the void, where she is retrieved by Kane and brought back to the digital circus. It turns out that the exit doors were only made by Kane because he knew how much the cast wanted an exit, but Kane didn't know how to let them leave, so he didn't know where to make the exit door end at. Trapped in a video game. This is the theory that all of the Amazing Digital Circus characters are trapped in a video game. When Pomni first arrives in the circus, she mentions that she put on a VR headset and then arrived at the circus, but she doesn't remember much else besides that. This is why people believe that the Amazing Digital Circus takes place in a video game, because they put the VR headset on to get there in the first place. Exotica. Exotica is the name that would have been given to Pomni before Kane respun the name picker. There's actually more to Exotica that meets the eye. If we shift all of the letters back in this word 9 letters back throughout the alphabet, you get the word owit, or out. What's even more interesting is if you read the letters above Exotica, we see the letters P, N, C, M, M, and if we shift those back 9 letters, we get the word gitted, or get. So altogether, the secret message that we are given is get out. Gooseworks has commented on the term Exotica before, saying that Dutica is an inside joke with her friends, and she added an X to the beginning just to make it harder to pronounce. But unless this is an insane coincidence, I don't believe that for a second. Fan art. Fan art is any art made by a fan that is not an official artist. Ever since the creation of the Amazing Digital Circus, there's been a massive amount of fan art created about it, ranging from being created with passion and love for the show to whatever this is. While most fan art is appreciated by the show's creators, weird fan art and sexual content is usually looked down upon, and rightfully so.
You parasite!
You parasite is a phrase that Kane shouts at Bubble after they continually frustrate him throughout the first day in the pilot episode. I'm not sure if Bubble being a parasite has any actual significance to the show's plot or some kind of hidden meaning, but Bubble is irritating, so I say let Kane go off. Kane hates adult content. Kane shows his disdain for adult content in the new Season 1 trailer for the Amazing Digital Circus. We see him showing Pomni how famous the Amazing Digital Circus has gotten, and then he shows Pomni an image search with everything blurred out. Kane even tells Pomni that she made a little crying mark on the internet with her little crying face, and that it is only gonna get a lot worse from here due to their actions. The Amazing Digital Circus is an isekai. The Amazing Digital Circus is widely joked about being an isekai, which is a genre anime where a character is thrown into a strange and unfamiliar world, which is exactly what happens to Pomni. This is even referenced in a soundtrack of the first episodes, with one of the songs comedically being named Get Isekai'd, so obviously this was done on purpose. Christian symbolism. Some of the Amazing Digital Circus can be interpreted as symbolic of the Christian religion. First of all, we have the character Kane, the company that is thought to have run the Amazing Digital Circus is known as CNA, so many have speculated that it could be an acronym for Cain and Abel. Cain is also the first human who was born and not created by God, and he goes on to kill his brother due to his immense jealousy, which was caused by Abel giving better gifts to God. While Cain gave God much less in sacrifice for his sins, maybe Cain had a brother named Abel who he killed or similarly got rid of, but instead of being marked and cast from society like in the biblical story, he was thrown in the digital world, or put himself into it. This point might also be a stretch, but maybe the digital circus is a metaphor for being born again, similarly to how the coming to Christian faith is referred to as being born again. No Mouth and I Must Scream inspiration. I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream is a short story which was written in only one night about a post-apocalyptic world taking place during World War III. A group of sentient computers end up exterminating humanity and taking over the world throughout the story's plot. The computers, or AM, which stands for an Allied Master Computer, is often referred to as God in the story because they alter and do what they want to the humans held captive in the story. If you've seen The Amazing Digital Circus, Kane is sort of similar to the Allied Master Computer in the fact that he is AI and is in charge of what he wants to do with a group of humans. Gooseworks has even stated that The Amazing Digital Circus is basically quote-unquote I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream, with the aesthetic of an I Spy book. Kaufmo. Kaufmo is one of many, as well as the most recent character to abstract in the timeline of The Amazing Digital Circus. We see him first mentioned when it says that he is not present for the show's intro when Pomni shows up. Then, Ragatha and Jax agree to go take Pomni to meet Kaufmo, but found out that he's sadly abstracted. Apparently, Kaufmo's had a long history in the circus. Some of the other characters mention that he has been recently acting strange, and when Kaufmo attacks Ragatha, she profusely apologizes for fake laughing at his jokes. Not much else is known about him, but it's speculated that Pomni was a direct replacement for Kaufmo. Mannequins. The mannequins are the wooden placeholders that are seen a few times in the pilot episode. First, we see them on the door without a red X on them, and then we see them dining with Kane in a restaurant. It's all but confirmed that they are placeholders for the circus members because they appear nowhere else in the show. Character reveal teasers. The character reveal trailers are a group of trailers that aired showcasing all of the main characters from The Amazing Digital Circus. We have showcases for Ragatha, Jax, Gangle, Bubble, Kinger, and Zooble. Fun fact, Kinger and Bubble's videos are actually connected.
Yeah.
Behind the scenes. There are several behind the scenes videos for The Amazing Digital Circus. Glitch Productions is pretty well known for showing lots of behind the scenes content from before and after an episode is aired, from the many different stages of animation. In fact, you can find all of the behind the scenes for The Amazing Digital Circus on Kevin Temmer's channel. So if you want to check that out, I have it linked in the description. Foreign language dubs. This is referring to how The Amazing Digital Circus is dubbed into multiple different languages. In fact, if you go to the new audio track feature on YouTube, you can see that it's dubbed into 18 different languages, which I think is pretty cool. Sun and Moon. The Sun and the Moon are two characters that only appeared a few times so far in The Amazing Digital Circus. We see them first when Kane is giving Pomni a look around the circus grounds, but then the Moon gets a bit freaky. Also, in the Season 1 trailer, we see the Sun make a threat on Kane's life because there is no written scenes for her, which Kane then agrees to put more scenes with the Sun. And I'm hoping the Sun is not nearly as frisky as the Moon. Jump scare door. Now this one is interesting. Funnily enough, this scene right here became a huge meme in the community. The reason for this is because Glitch posted this scene with a green screen, and you can imagine that the community did some pretty creative stuff with it. Pomni's name is Remember in Russian. This one is pretty self-explanatory, but what's not self-explanatory is the meaning behind it, and I've came up with 3 different things this could mean. The first conclusion I came to is Pomni couldn't remember anything when she entered the circus. I think it's said best by this Reddit user right here. The fact that the word Pomni in Russian means remember is ironic because she doesn't remember anything else besides putting on a headset before getting into this simulation. I mean, for crying out loud, she couldn't even remember her own name, making Kane have to spin the name wheel so so that she could have a name in the circus. The second possible theory I have is that Pomni could be the key for escaping the circus. Now, this one may be a stretch, but let's think about it for a second. We all know that Pomni joined the circus in the same episode that Kaufmo abstracted, and Gooseworks has previously stated that they had to get rid of Kaufmo because there were too many characters in the circus. But we will get back to that in a second. What's most important here is that Pomni was replaced by Kaufmo, and they are both clown archetypes. And if we remember, Kaufmo had the word exit written all over his room. It seems weird to me that Pomni and Kaufmo are the only characters that know of this exit. So maybe Pomni's name being remember in Russian could be a reference to how Pomni and Kaufmo were the only characters that remember the exit. The third theory I came up with is that it doesn't mean anything, but I think this one's pretty unlikely though, because this is just way too big to be a coincidence. Queenie. Queenie is one of the characters who have abstracted and has their face crossed off in the hallway with everyone's bedrooms. She's a black chess piece, and it is obviously somewhat connected to Kanger, most likely romantically. Concept art. Concept art refers to the vast amount of early draft art for the show before they decided on final designs for everything. There is a lot of concept art out there, including Frog Pomni and much more. Kane is a good guy theory. The Kane is a good guy theory suggests that Kane is not actually bad, but is only doing what he believes is best for the humans. I think this could be true, because even though the exit he created in the first episode was fake, he does it because everyone wanted it, but couldn't figure out what to do with it. Criticism of the show. The Amazing Digital Circus is far from having no criticism. If you look at just about anything that's popular, people are bound to hate it. So it's only par for the course that the Amazing Digital Circus has its fair share of haters and criticism. Among the most popular criticisms is that it's cringe, and that it's for little kids. But honestly, I don't think that this is the creator's fault, but rather the community's fault for having, let's say, a weird interpretation of the show. Content farms. Content farms are very well known in the Amazing Digital Circus fandom just because there are so many of them. Content farms are basically large channels that employ many freelance writers and have them mindlessly writing scripts for money, but most of that goes to pay the owners and co-owners of the channel. And while the content is usually mediocre at best, a lot of people will still watch it and make them lots of money. But the worst offenders of this are the low quality animation channels, specifically Hornstop. And I have no idea how they pump this many animations out about the Amazing Digital Circus, but just from one glance at it, you can see that it's not really that good quality, and the voices sound off. I could talk so much more about content farms, but I've made plenty of other videos about that, so if you want to see more about content farms specifically, watch some of my other videos after this video. Bubble likes vomit. In the pilot episode of the Amazing Digital Circus, we see Pomni throwing up on the floor, which Bubble then promptly licks it up to get it off the floor, and eats all of it, which is kind of freaky. Bubble seemed to really enjoy it though, so it's best not to judge. 8 episodes, 1 season. This refers to the confirmed fact that the Amazing Digital Circus will run an entire 8 episodes across 1 season. In a Tumblr post, the creator actually described all of the episodes with one word. The pilot episode is boy, episode 2 is damn, episode 3 is oh, episode 4 is haha, episode 5 is guns, episode 6 is huh, episode 7 is oh, and episode 8 is what? This makes me think that episode 8 will actually leave season 1 on a cliffhanger. And with how much people like the Amazing Digital Circus, I would say that we are definitely getting a second season of the show. Unnamed former characters. This point refers to all of the characters that have a crossed off face on their door in the long hallway with the characters' rooms in them. And it's all but confirmed that these characters were previously a part of the circus, but have since been abstracted. But don't worry, I know you guys are curious about this, so I'll go through them real quick. Starting with the purple dinosaur, the first character we see in the hallway with an X crossed over their face. Second, we got the black chess piece Queenie, who is theorized to be Kinger's wife. I suspect that Kinger might hold the key to her abstraction. Third, we got some ball-looking jester, almost like Pomni, who appears to be exactly the same as her besides her body shape. Maybe this jester-looking guy is who was replaced by Kaufmo. Fourth is the gum monster-looking thing. Fifth is this dog with a long neck. Sixth is this furry toy worm on a rope, which is called a squirmel or a snoop. Seventh is this honestly creepy-looking yellow and blue clown guy. None of the new characters really remind me of him that much, and he honestly looks more like fan art than an actual character in my opinion. He seems to be another early version of Pomni or Kaufmo, and at this point, I'm starting to wonder why there are so many clown characters that have abstracted. 8th is this, which I honestly can't really make out. Let me know what you think this is in the comments below. Existential themes. The Amazing Digital Circus has had quite a few existential themes due to the whole show being about Pomni questioning her new existence in this digital world. Centipedes isn't Ragatha's only fear. It's widely known that Ragatha's only fear is centipedes, but this point suggests that she has another fear that she is keeping a secret from anyone else. And honestly, this wouldn't surprise me because I feel like there is a lot more to Ragatha that we don't know yet. So hopefully we'll find more about her in the later episodes of the season. Kane doesn't let the humans escape the circus because he doesn't know how. This is pretty much proven at this point, at least somewhat, because Kane creates an exit but makes it teleport basically into the middle of nowhere. But maybe he knows more than he's letting on. I guess we'll just have to wait and see. Trans allegory. This point refers to the Amazing Digital Circus being a metaphor for an allegory for the transgender experience. A lot of transgender people don't feel like they belong in their body after transitioning, which is pretty much the plot for the Amazing Digital Circus. Gooseworks is a transgender woman, so it wouldn't be surprising if that was somewhat a part of the show's narrative and theme. Pomni was originally supposed to be a frog. According to Gooseworks on her Tumblr, before Pomni was a jester, she was actually a frog in the very early stages of development. Well, this design didn't go very far, and this was probably leaning more towards the idea of a illuminating body inside of a kid's game. The show probably wouldn't have been much different if they ended up going with this design. Gooseworks' drill fetish. This one is a bit strange, and there really wasn't a lot of material to work with, but the gist of the story is that many years ago, Gooseworks made some art with various characters having their heads smashed into by a drill, and when someone asked about it, she said that you can't prove it's a fetish, which made a lot of people very upset for some reason, and people even harassed and doxed her, as well as accusing her for some pretty wild and messed up things. Pomni and Jax were originally going to be gender swapped. Gooseworks has gone on record to say that originally Pomni would be male and Jax would be female, but the idea didn't go far enough for any designs to be created of female Jax and male Pomni. But it makes me wonder how much more down bad people would be if Jax was a female. TheWackyWatch.com. If you didn't know, The Wacky Watch is a secret website where the creators post teasers for the show. This website was first referenced in the pilot episode when Kane got a notification on his Wacky Watch about Pomni entering the void. But on screen while this is happening, you can see a Wacky Watch website URL displayed on screen. And if you didn't know, the content on this website has been changed multiple times. For the first couple of months after the pilot episode released, it would link you to a VHS style advertisement for the Amazing Digital Circus. And a couple months later though, sometime in January, it was changed to this gif right here of Pomni sleeping in her bed, which caused a lot of speculation about what the inside of her room would actually look like. And finally, a couple of months later, the season 1 trailer dropped, clearing up all of the confusion about this leak. And as of right now, while recording this video, the Wacky Watch is still on this gif right here of Pomni laying in her bed wide awake. Dr. Football. Now, quite honestly, while writing this video, I had no idea what this meant, so I got curious and ended up looking it up on the wiki. And it turns out that Dr. Football is the name of this mannequin that scares Pomni in the bathroom. This made me wonder though, why is this mannequin named Dr. Football? So I did some digging and found this. But then later, Gooseworks actually posted more context to this by leaking some old plot points from the show. And here we get another bit of information about Dr. Football. She said, quote unquote, Dr. Football is a funny name for a character who is not a doctor and has nothing to do with football. Honestly, this does not surprise me at all coming from Gooseworks. Abstraction makes you leave the circus theory. The form of the characters, from what we've assumed, is based on the personality of the characters. But what if abstracting is the disconnection of the mind from the form? It's the game not knowing what form it should display, and it ends up displaying some sort of abstracted glitchy monster. But I have some proof of that. When someone who is abstracted touches things, they glitch and break, because abstracted people aren't meant to be like that, and a game isn't sure how to handle it. Also, so far, the only abstracted person we have seen is Kaufmo, and he was going insane about it. So what if it was him just leaving? It also makes sense on why Kane can't fix it, because the player's mind is gone, and therefore it no longer exists, and there is no way to fix it. Drown yourself in the digital lake. Drown yourself in the digital lake refers to what Kane says while introducing Pomni to the circus grounds. Jax is Gengar. Now honestly, I have no idea what this means. The only thing that I could think this means is that Jax is Gengar from Pokemon? And honestly, I don't really see a correlation, besides that Gengar is purple and has a smile. Really, the only correlation that is similar is their teeth, but that's about it. Pomni entered the circus voluntarily. While writing this script, I thought this theory was stupid, but as I thought more about it, I realized that this theory might have actually just solved the amazing digital circus. That might sound crazy, but let me explain. It's widely theorized that all of the past circus members worked at a company called CNA. We also know that Pomni is Kaufmo's replacement in the circus. Now that we got all that out of the way, I can tell you my theory. I think that Pomni is a former member of CNA that knew the evil things that were going on behind the scenes. And after a while of seeing her colleagues get trapped in the digital circus, she had enough and went in voluntarily to try to save her friends. The only problem is, she didn't account for the fact that her memory would get wiped. And that's where we are now. Pomni is stuck in the circus with no memories at all. Not even the solution for how to free herself and her friends. The human minds were only uploaded, not transported to the digital circus. One of the more popular theories in the amazing digital circus community is the theory that the human minds or consciousnesses were uploaded to the amazing digital circus, and the cast members we see in the games are not controlled by their actual physical bodies. One piece of proof for this is that when Pomni tries to take off the headset, they grab at their digital face, which wouldn't be possible in a normal VR game. This is also shown to be possibly true when Pomni is in the office and she sees what is insinuated to be her desk with a VR headset that is taken off and left there. Humans were sent to the digital circus as punishment. Now, there's a lot to this theory, so let me give you guys a brief backstory. The Amazing Digital Circus is a computer game that was created in the late 80s or early 90s. We know this because when we zoom out of the computer at the end of the episode, we can see that it all takes place in a computer simulation. We also know that Kane is the AI ringmaster that controls the humans of the circus. And last but not least, the company CNA definitely plays some sort of significance here. Now that we got all that out of the way, we can start to dissect why humans might have been sent here as a punishment. Now, after doing some research, I really couldn't find anything about what the company CNA is. So for this theory, I'm just going to assume that it is some sort of early company from the early 90s that was researching virtual reality technology. And one of the first games that they developed for this headset was the Amazing Digital Circus. And while they were testing the game, one of the humans got trapped and couldn't take the headset off. This is because without them knowing the headset was on, their consciousness got transported into the digital world, and what happened to their body in the real world is unknown. As the years went on, more and more people went missing at the CNA building, going to test out this VR headset, and one by one, their consciousness got trapped inside of the Amazing Digital Circus. But you may be asking, how does this relate to it being a punishment? Well, what if I told you that the person who made this VR headset is actually evil, and fully intended for it to be a trap for people in the world? So my theory is that all of the circus members are former employees of CNA that got sent to try the VR headset as a punishment for not acting the right way at their job. One of Pomni's eyelashes is upside down. This is referring to Pomni's eyelashes, with the right one being under her eye and the left one being under her eye. This wasn't on accident though, as even the plush design has this little detail. Whether or not it has any importance to the show, I'm not really sure. Mere scene, deeper significance. We all know the iconic scene in the show where Pomni is checking herself out in the mirror. The most likely theory I came up with is that this is the first time Pomni was seeing herself as a digital avatar in the circus, and this is why she was checking herself out for so long. And I mean, you can't really blame her, because if my consciousness was transported into this digital world, I would definitely be confused too. The original draft. This refers to an early version of the first episode's pilot. While I couldn't find any known leaks of this, maybe it says do not research because there isn't anything to research. The closest thing to a draft that I could find is some early art that Gooseworks posted to her Tumblr page. Let me know in the comments below though if I'm just missing something here, because I actually just can't find anything about this. Zubal's door icon and consistency. This refers to Zubal's door icon being different from how they look in the episode. If you look closely, they will have a yellow stick and ball out of their head, a purple wing, and a black and white striped arm, and a triangle on their chest, where in the actual episode they have a squiggly line on their head, a red and yellow arm, a pink sharp thing on their back, and a green circle on their chest. Although Gooseworks has stated and shown that Zubal's design will change in every single episode, so maybe this wasn't actually a mistake. The show is an allegory for Gnosticism. This point suggests that the Amazing Digital Circus is some sort of metaphor for Gnosticism, a religion that started in the 1st century AD. People who practice this believe that the real, material world, the one that we live in, is evil, and the only way for salvation is through discovery of the secrets of the universe. There are a few parallels to be drawn here. What I think it means is that the real world was evil, so they escaped into the digital circus to live forever. This could also possibly actually tie into the apocalypse theory, where many believe that the people went into the digital circus because the real world was awful or have been destroyed. Kaufmo faked his death. I saved this one for last because there is a lot more lore behind this one than you might think. But first, you need some backstory. You may or may not know this, but Kaufmo's name seems to be a reference to the famous comedian Andy Kaufman, but there's more than just a resemblance between their names. In fact, one of them is a clown and one of them is a comedian. Gooseworks even calls Kaufmo by the name Kaufman in one of their concept arts. But further down the rabbit hole, you can look at some of the things associated with Andy Kaufman. For some background information, Andy Kaufman was considered to be some sort of anti-comedian and preferred to perform in a way that wasn't traditionally funny. Unfortunately, he succumbed to cancer at the early age of 35. But rumors circulated and people believe that Andy Kaufman never truly died. Of course, he never did reveal himself though. In the wake of these wild rumors, the LA coroner's office released his death certificate to verify that he was, in fact, dead. Back to Kaufmo. Kaufmo, who was based off Kaufman, happened to have been effectively killed off in the very first episode. Now, when Kaufmo was a reference to the performer who has a legacy associated with the idea of him faking his death, and Kaufmo, who has been abstracted, effectively unrecognizable as actually being Kaufmo, can we really say for sure that he actually abstracted? As I see it, I could guess Kaufmo being a play on Kaufman's quote-unquote death hoax rumors in one of three ways. Kaufmo faked his death. He put someone else who had abstracted in his room and snuck off somewhere. And he will reappear in a later episode and lead us into the deeper secrets of the digital circus. Number 2, Kaufmo did not fake his death, and the existence of a theory where Kaufmo said he faked his death is some sort of a joke that Gooseworks planned for us as a parallel to Andy Kaufman's rumors while naming him. Absolute 4D chess. Or lastly, the third thing that could have happened is Kaufmo didn't fake his death, but maybe someone else did. And the person who could have done this is potentially Kane. We still don't know of Kane's true motives, so it's possible that he fakes Kaufmo's abstraction to make the circus members more reliant on him, and more afraid of what will happen to them. So what do you guys think? Is this something that Gooseworks thought about while naming Kaufmo? Well, this has been the amazing digital circus iceberg. I hope you guys enjoyed watching. Make sure to tell me what you think about the theories on this iceberg down in the comments below. Kaufmo from the amazing digital circus is still alive. And I know what you're thinking. How could he be alive if he abstracted in the first episode? Well, in this video, I'm gonna tell you what happened to Kaufmo, the reason he got abstracted in the first place, and find out if he's still alive. If we want to find out if Kaufmo is still alive, first we need to look into what happened to Kaufmo in the first place. Well, you may think the answer is obvious. What happened to him is a lot more complex than you would think. Kaufmo was a full-fledged member of the circus like everyone else. And if you listen to the intro of the episode where all the characters were introduced, originally all the characters' names were sung as they were supposed to be, including the part about Kaufmo. But as soon as his name was said, where is he? Instead of a real character, we just saw a cardboard cutout of the clown, which implies that Kaufmo was not showing up that day. Conveniently the day Pomni joined the circus, which I have a theory that Pomni is Kaufmo's replacement. It makes perfect sense because Kaufmo was a clown and Pomni is a jester, which are two very different things. And the creator mentioned that there were too many characters in the circus and they needed to get rid of one character to add in Pomni. But that's a whole nother theory for another day. If we want to find out if Kaufmo is still alive, we need to find out how long Kaufmo's been a resident of the circus. Well, it's not known for sure. Many people and myself believe that Kaufmo has been in the circus for only a relatively short time. This is proven by the clip where Kanger says Kaufmo has been acting more and more out of character lately.
Impenetrable fortress!
You want to come with us to check on Kaufmo?
No, not really. I think Kaufmo's gone insane. Last time I spoke with him, he was rambling endlessly about some exit. Kinda like you, Pomni.
This proves that Kaufmo's been acting out of character for a while, and he didn't just start acting like this overnight. This may sound strange, but Kaufmo is a clown, and a clown is the backbone of a circus. I mean, really, can you think of a circus that doesn't have a clown in it? My point is that Kaufmo was the star of the amazing digital circus before he disappeared. But what does this mean? Maybe every clown archetype that joins the circus automatically just knows a little bit more than the other characters. This is very easy to prove just by looking at the reactions of all the other characters when they talk about the exit. I'm more than sure if Kaufmo was with the crew in the first episode, he would have sided with Pomni immediately. And as we know, many characters characters have abstracted before Kaufmo. Kaufmo was a good-natured and funny guy who understood the horrors of what were going on in the circus more than anyone else. But even with knowing this, he still remained really cheerful and upbeat, holding the circus together. As Ragatha told us, our clown was always trying to make a joke or cheer everyone up in some sort of way, but not everyone appreciated it. Before the abstracted Kaufmo attacked Ragatha, she confessed to him and apologized for not appreciating all that Kaufmo has done for them.
Wait, maybe there's still time to fix him if we get Kane. Whoa, Kaufmo, listen. I know we didn't always get along, like when you called me out for fake laughing at your jokes. I swear I really did think they were funny. I was just having a bit of a bad day.
But if we want to find more about what happened to Kaufmo, first we need to find out why Kaufmo abstracted. With all of our current information, it seems like all the characters who started going crazy ended up abstracting. Even Zubul ended up admitting that it was very strange that Kaufmo abstracted because she thought that Kinger would be next. Which is not too crazy to assume because it seems like Kinger has serious problems. He is very anxious, screams all the time, and behaves very strangely, and yet he is the longest lived inhabitant of the amazing digital circus. But it was Kaufmo who abstracted? We all remember Kinger saying that Kaufmo was always trying to talk about getting out. The obsession became Kaufmo's main problem, which led to his disappearance. In this case, one could easily argue that it's not the characters who suffer from mental disorders who disappear, but those who have gone insane with thoughts of leaving the circus, which would be Kaufmo. But I have undeniable proof about this that will tell us what ultimately happened to Kaufmo, which brings me to my next point. We've already seen that Kaufmo started out as a funny character, but nobody found his jokes funny. Maybe besides Ragatha, but even that is questionable. And I'm sure that this did not make staying in the digital hellscape easy for him. Gradually, he went from being a happy, cheerful guy to being a depressed man with obsessive thoughts that dictated the rules of his life. It's not exactly known what kind of relationship our clown had with the other characters of the circus, but we can safely say that at least Ragatha always laughed at his jokes. And Jax did not care about Kaufmo or anyone else for that matter. In fact, it's likely that Jax actually played some sort of role in tipping Kaufmo over the edge, because it's known that Jax likes to mess with other members of the circus as shown in this clip right here.
They broke my comedy mask.
So, Kane, we having a new adventure today for the newbie or what?
So Jax actually could have played a part in abstracting Kaufmo, but back to my main point, Kaufmo did not have enough support from any other members of the circus to snap out of it and get back to normal. The other characters hardly encouraged him, thinking he was crazy when he started talking about his way to escape the circus, kind of like what happened to Pomni, which only reinforced his belief that nobody needed him here. Everybody remembers what Kaufmo's room looked like, and I doubt it's always looked like this. In fact, I doubt Kaufmo drew this all in one day. This is something that would take weeks or months to draw, which proves that nobody ever visited Kaufmo's room to see how he was doing or ask if he was okay. And in Kaufmo's room, you can see a huge number of exit drawings. And there are various pictures that we don't understand yet, where Kaufmo is depicted as an evil clown, or the strangest picture where he has drawn himself but only in a dissipated form. But the main picture in Kaufmo's room is a drawing of an evil-looking Kane where he has huge fangs like a dog or a wolf, instead of the usual teeth he has, chasing after the unfortunate clown. But this drawing will actually come in handy to figure out what really happened to Kaufmo. Now that you have all the information you could possibly need about Kaufmo, we're going to find out what actually happened to him. As you know, Kaufmo started going crazy by looking for a way out of the circus. He realized that he had to get out of here because everything he has seen so far was a lie. We all noticed the strange drawing where evil Kane is chasing Kaufmo, where it looks like he's trying to eat or destroy him. But why is that? If you think about it, Kane actually becomes very strange and evil at the mention of an exit. Because we know he's AI, it's likely that he was programmed to do this. But what does any of this have to do with what happened to Kaufmo? Well, I just found a scene that perfectly illustrates what happened to him. As we know, Pomni and Kaufmo are very similar, almost too similar. So it's almost guaranteed that Kaufmo saw the exits, the void, and the basement, where all the abstracted characters are hidden in form of monsters. But if he went insane enough to get abstracted, we can only imagine what more he has seen. But what did Kaufmo see that Pomni didn't? The computer in the desk of the office in the exit rooms. We all know that this computer plays some sort of significance in the real and digital world, as we see it in the circus at the end of the show when we zoom out of the void into the real world. So I have a crazy theory where Kaufmo discovered this computer and saw something on it that led him to ultimately get abstracted. This is supported by the drawings you see on Kaufmo's wall just before he disappears. Realizing all the horrors of further life here, Kaufmo was trying to imagine one of the exits he saw from the information on the computer. And as we know, he found himself in the same office as Pomni. But not understanding what to do next, he quietly explored and came to the last room leading to the void. Like Pomni, Kane was able to recognize this and teleported Kaufmo back to the circus. But Kaufmo, determined to leave, tried a few more times, and each time Kane managed to stop him. Perhaps after one of these attempts, the very situation that Kaufmo painted on his room actually took place. He left that as a clue to the rest of the circus on what Kane can really do. He wanted to let the members know that Kane is not to be trusted and should be feared. After many failed attempts, Kaufmo had an idea on how to outsmart Kane, and he got into the void without anyone knowing. But why the void? After Kaufmo realizes that Kane is not who he says, he assumes that the void is just a room that leads nowhere, and where the character will stay forever. Then, Kane would just most likely leave Kaufmo there to wander around for the rest of his life after so many attempts to save him. But no, he saved him every single time, which means that going through the void is somewhere the characters are not supposed to be. There would be another door leading to the basement, and Kaufmo knew that because he has gotten there himself after doing all of this. Kaufmo realized that there is a real world outside of the void by outsmarting Kane, and Kaufmo was able to get out. Once Kane realized this, there was nothing he could do. After all of his power is inside of the amazing digital circus, and the only option was to make Kaufmo look like a complete psycho that has gone too far. So far, in fact, that he became a disintegrated, abstracted monster. And Kane has clearly done this many times because there is a lot of strange monsters in the basement that look the exact same. It's as they are all pre-programmed NPCs that Kane creates in such cases. And so we can say that all the other characters who are no longer in the circus didn't dissipate at all. But on the contrary, they were able to escape despite the horror going on inside of them, and finally got out of this terrible place. But why do the monsters stay in the basement after Kane puts them there? Well, I just found the answer. See, Kane has to maintain his mechanism in the circus that when you start freaking out and seeing exits about how to get out of the circus, a character is bound to see the basement behind one of those doors. At this point, Kane will explain that all the other characters who suffer the exact same thing as Kaufmo will eventually also end up in the basement. So the characters being sent to the basement is just a way to scare the other members of the circus. But this brings us to our last point, and I finally answer the question that you guys have all been waiting for. Yes, Kaufmo is still alive. In fact, he is in a lot better of a state than anyone else who has escaped the circus. For what we know now, he is a free man in the real world, not having to endure this digital hell anymore. The most important thing in his life will be to understand the principle of how humans got there. After all, it has been long known that Kane and Bubble are artificial intelligence, and all the other characters are human. Maybe it'll take weeks, months, or even years, but given Kaufmo's tenacity and what the circus has done to him, it seems to me that Kaufmo will be able to understand the process that's going on and stop it, thus preventing even the slightest chance of new people entering the circus. So now you know what happened to Kaufmo.